Kate Milefalcho, welcome to Irishgrannyhelen. We're continuing our Saturday book on this 4th of July weekend. And this is video number 4 of Going Hollywood, Midwesterners in Movie Land by Sara Jordan-Heintz. Sara wrote our book, if you remember, that we covered a while back on Dorothy Kilgallen. If you haven't listened to those videos, I encourage you to listen to them, and I encourage you to get the book. It's a great book. Okay, we're actually on chapter 5, Anne Baxter, Curtain Call. And I have to say, she's one of those actresses that I don't immediately recognize in movies. Very much a person of her time period. She looks like a lot of other people to me. I have face blindness about her specifically. She was considered classy, refined, witty, and elegant. She was born May 7th, 1923 in Michigan City, Indiana. Her father was a Seagram's executive. Seagram's, whiskey. And her mother was a teacher and the daughter of Frank Lloyd Wright. Who knew that Anne Baxter was Frank Lloyd Wright's granddaughter? I had no idea until I read this book. In 1976, in her autobiography Intermission, she said, "Mother was his favorite child and used to call her Taffy. She was beautiful and saucy and thoroughly individualistic, all of which he loved. But when the family broke apart, a divorce granted in 1922, she'd understandably sided with her mother, and there had been many painful scenes." Oh, this was making no sense to me. Well, it should make no sense to anybody. Let me start over. This was written by, what is an autobiography written by Anne. Her mother was Frank Lloyd Wright's favorite child. The family broke apart. Oh, his family broke apart. Duh. So stupid. I was thinking Anne Baxter's parents split up. No. Her mother's parents split up in her mother's childhood and kind of lost connection there. Okay, let's continue, shall we? Frank Lloyd Wright's son, John, invented, wait for it, Lincoln Logs. Who are these people? It's unbelievable. Anyway, Anne was raised in New York City luxury, very sophisticated. She went to the Brearley School. If you've ever heard of the Brearley School, it's like the Dalton School, one of those upper crust schools. At 10, she decided to be an actress, and by 13, she was in a Broadway play. She studied at the School of Dramatic Arts, which was a Lee Strasberg production, method acting, and we all remember what he did to Marilyn Monroe. She went to Hollywood, and after 2 years, she was in The Magnificent Ambersons. Her next film, Five Graves to Cairo, got 3 Oscar nominations. In 1943, in North Star, she got top billing and high praise. In 46, she was in The Razor's Edge. She got an Academy Award and a Golden Globe. And still, I don't recognize her when I see her. It's terrible. She called it her only great performance. She said that she used the emotions of the death of her 3-year-old brother to evoke emotion for the film. Strasberg. July 7th, 1946, she married John Hodiak, a very 1950s guy in movies. In 51, their only child was born, and they divorced when their daughter was 15 months old. At 41, he died of a heart attack. She felt responsible for the failure of the marriage, and she always saw herself as a widow, even though they'd already been divorced when he died. In 1950, she was in All About Eve. She was Eve Harrington. She got 14 nominations. Well, the movie got 14 nominations. However, Bette Davis and Anne Baxter were both nominated for Best Actress. And the movie got 6 nominations for Best Picture. They two were up against Gloria Swanson in Sunset Boulevard and Judy Holliday in Born Yesterday. And Holliday won. Big shakeup. People blamed Anne Baxter for splitting the vote, I guess. Her daughter says, it wasn't like that. Eve, all about Eve, the character, has been rated the 23rd, number 23 out of the 50 greatest film villains. Later, Baxter took over for Bacall as Eve in the stage version of Applause as Margot Channing, which was Bette Davis's role. I didn't realize that the Broadway production Applause was based on All About Eve. But Lauren Bacall played Bette Davis's role, Margot Channing, and Anne Baxter stepped into those shoes. So that's an interesting departure. In 1953, she was in Hitchcock's movie I Confess. She was not Hitchcock's number one choice. Anita Bjork got canned because Jack Warner didn't like that she was a single mother, at which point they put Anne Baxter in the role. She went on Broadway again and then did The Blue Gardenia, which was a suspense thriller. In 1956, she did The Ten Commandments. She was Nefertiti. Oh my God. It was the 5th highest grossing movie of all time. Wow. It got 6 Oscar nominations and it won 1 for visual effects. Costumes were by Edith Head. She herself, Edith Head, had in her career 35 nominations and won 8 Academy Awards, the most of any woman for her costume designs. She was the godmother to Anne's daughter, Melissa. Let's see here. What have we got? Melissa says her mother was working all the time. She was basically a workaholic. I think that's one of the reasons why Mother and she got along so famously. Oh, she's talking about Edith Head. They both were completely devoted to their craft, and my mother would be the first to tell you that her career was way before her family. Aunt Edie, this is Edith Head, didn't have family beyond Uncle Bill. At the studio, she had the persona, the bun in the back of the head, the bangs, the glasses, the little gray suits, and very businesslike. And the stars in front of her were the stars there. At home, she relaxed, she cut up, she laughed, she liked to joke that she dressed like a Spanish omelet. She was very bohemian in her dress at home. Nothing like what you saw at the studio. She didn't even know how to draw when she dove into costume designing. It's very interesting. Okay. But, she was clever. She dressed in a business suit, a gray business suit with glasses and her hair in a bun, and gave this illusion of very businesslike, but it wasn't really what Edith Head was like. In 1959, she made The Summer of the Seventh Doll. A friend tried to set her up with an Australian rancher, but they never actually met. She was in Australia for this thing. She returned to the United States and got together with her 91-year-old grandfather for the very last time. There's a picture of them together here, in case you think I'm making this up. Here's Frank Lloyd Wright and his granddaughter, the actress Anne Baxter. Wright died in April of 1959. Anne Baxter was tricked by an Australian friends into talking to this guy Galt, this rancher, on the phone and agreeing to meet with him. She wanted to say yes, but she's 6.5 years older and she felt like, I don't know, it's weird. Then there was a death threat on Galt, and because of that, they got married in Hawaii. She had a stalker. The stalker held her agent at gunpoint. I think there was a sense of maybe she was a little safer being married to him. They moved to Australia and lived in the outback. She made a couple of other movies. She was in a movie with Ronald Reagan, and she said he was just too preachy about politics. She was not happy in this ranch in the outback. There's a big shockaroo. You're a big Hollywood star, and you move into the middle of nowhere in Australia. You couldn't be farther away. Loneliness was a prescription at Giro. This is the name of the ranch. You took it every morning like vitamins. My love for her husband was enormous, but it was self-harm to live in his pocket. He had a right to his world. I just wished he'd share a bit more of it with me. She compared her lifestyle to that of early pioneer women on the frontier. Most people ask me about my adjustment, that chimera. What could I say? Tell them my plates were too big for the sink? Or never to wash sheets when the river is up? Or that I missed being coddled like an egg by American anything? Or that I was horror-stricken at maggoty garbage, or that I was singularly inept at floor mopping, or that I was often desperate for a dial phone with a friend at the other end, that I wasn't up for any of it and secretly despaired at all my professional training going to waste. She suffered a miscarriage early on in the marriage, a blow she wrote about in her memoir, and then learned that she was once again with child. Then she made a walk in the 1961, a walk in the wild side. And I guess there were a lot of egos involved in that. She was trying to hide her 7-month pregnancy. And then the baby was a month overdue. Well, somebody got their numbers wrong. In October of 1962, she had Melissa. And then March of 64, she had Maganel. But between them, she had 4 miscarriages. So eventually they got divorced. And Melissa went on later to describe her father, Ran, was his name. And she called him that. He didn't remarry until his mother died and my mother died, and they died in 6 months of each other. He also became born again. He was never really cut out for marriage. He just wasn't. He could do anything he wanted and pretty much did, and that's what tanked the marriage as far as I can see. He was not responsible. He was not reliable. He was great as an escort, great as a boyfriend, but sucked as a husband or a father. And I wouldn't have any problem telling him that to his face. Near as I know, my younger sister might speak to him once or twice a year. I haven't spoken with him in probably 13 to 15 years. He was charming and handsome and swept my mother off her feet, and somehow, what was she thinking? He convinced her to run off to Australia, and she did, and then she found out that he was not all that. Melissa observed my father was one of those guys that wanted to keep her away from everything. It was manipulative and it was not smart. And it's not how my mother chose to live. Mother liked to live what I call engaged, connected, tuned in, turned on, each and every day. That's my mother, but not my father. My father's the antithesis of that. They were like oil and water. It was a mess. She said that Anne was down to earth, not a movie star type, but she needed to work. Hollywood was not welcoming for any actress over 40. She reinvented herself for TV and had many TV roles and appearances. She kept her family out of the limelight. She lived simply. She line dried her clothes, love it. Hand washed her dishes, could live without that, and downplayed the fame of her grandfather. Her daughter Melissa didn't know that his significance, how important he was, until she went to design school at the age of 30. That's hilarious. Anne was not grand. She was very human. At the age of 17, Baxter told Melissa I should never have been a mother. Being a mother was an intermission in her career, which was number one. Probably not something you should ever tell your children. Melissa had a bizarre series of caregivers. Anne missed much of their childhood and never told anyone who her mother was. Melissa never told anyone who her mother was until her college graduation day, and then they were all, "Why didn't you tell us?" She was always gracious to her fans, and in 1977 she married David Klee. It was a good marriage, but he dropped dead 9 months after they got married. In 1983, she stepped into a role on television TV Hope for Ailing with Betty Davis. Davis hadn't liked the show and called it Hotel. Oh, okay. Cannot read my writing today. This is terrible. She stepped into the TV role that Betty Davis had in the show Hotel. I guess it was a TV show because Betty Davis got sick. Betty Davis had not liked being in the show Hotel. She called it brothel. Baxter did 75 episodes. Her routine, I remember it was exhausting just reading about it. The 61-year-old actress disclosed her daily routine of staying fit and active. I have to rest at noon when I'm working. I take a 40-minute cat nap in my dressing room after I eat my rabbit food and take my vitamins. She began her day at 3:45 a.m. and would power walk before her 7:30 a.m. call on set. She went on to star in 75 episodes of Hotel. Then she had a stroke and died 8 days later, December 12, 1985, New York City, at the age of 62. Pretty, relatively young. She was a perfectionist with a zest for life. Her mother had always told her that she just wasn't good enough. She never felt good enough. Her 3 daughters were not very close. They were very different from each other. Baxter always said, "See into life. Don't just look at it." That's the story of Anne Baxter. I've got time. We'll do another star. Chapter 6, Jean Seberg. She is referred to here by Sara as Jean Seberg, living on the edge. Born November 13th, 1935, in Iowa, with a population of about 20,000 people in the town. But it was an arts and a cultural and a manufacturing hub, so it had a bit going on. Her father was a pharmacist, her mother was a teacher, and she was one of 4 children. From the 4th grade play on, she was into the arts and loved poetry. She told everyone that she would be a famous actress and that she would die before she was 40. She was always reading. Her family did not understand her. When she was 14, she joined the NAACP. She won awards, which is, I'm laughing because let me show you a picture of her. Here's a picture of her. She practically glows in the dark. She's so white. So it's just kind of funny. Admirable. Where am I? She won an award for high school acting. The high school paper called her the future Helen Hayes. December of 55, she was the first teenage chair of the Iowa March of Dimes. She made a promotion about curing polio. She was voted most likely to succeed. The locals all believed she would be a star. She got a scholarship to a summer stock thing in Massachusetts and New Jersey. She heard about Otto Preminger, who was searching for somebody to play Joan of Arc. 4 different groups of people who knew her submitted her name. She got invited to audition. Her parents said no, go to college. So she went to college. She dropped her stuff at the dorm and flew to the audition. She never returned to the university. She started the pixie cut look. She was introduced on the Ed Sullivan show as the winner of the job, the girl who caught lightning in a bottle. She was flown to London, and Preminger, who has a reputation of not being a very nice guy, he bullied her. They actually, when they did the scene of being burnt at the stake, they actually set a fire, and she got burned. She had scars from it. It's bizarre. There was a box office disaster called Drastically Miscast. It got tons of publicity. Luella Parsons asked her, "Are you going to marry Preminger?" And she said, "Certainly not. He's like a father to me. He's 33 years older than I." She was covered by Confidential magazine. They did a terrible article on her. It's so bad that her father went around town and bought all the copies and burned them. Then Preminger put her in Bonjour Tristesse. That was not a success. You got all the publicity in the world, but it won't make you a star if you're not also an actress. She tried to join the Actors Studio, and Strasberg told her to go home and write a letter asking to audit it. She did 3 times, and he never replied. There's a word for him. It's a nickname for Richard. She was in The Mouse That Roared. It was a failure. Little aside, I was friends with the author of the book, The Mouse That Roared. I babysat for her. She felt defeated. She met and fell in love with Francois Morel. She said it was like an oasis. She felt comforted. In 1958, they got married. They had a strong attraction, but they were polar opposites. She was like a fish out of water. This guy was wealthy. His family had a Paris apartment. He was very cosmopolitan. She wasn't accustomed to nightly catered affairs that his circle put out, and they got divorced. So she was offered a role by Jean-Luc Godard, was eccentric and less structured in his approach to filmmaking. And in that way, she got an entree into the world of serious French cinema. Godard offered her $12,000. He offered Columbia $12,000 to buy her out of her contract with Columbia. Or said, instead of that money, I'll give you half of the profits of the movie. They didn't think she was going anywhere, and they took the $12,000, and they lost out on getting a total of $3 million from the movie they made called Breathless. She wasn't quoted a salary, and there was no script. It was made like a home movie. It was not like any other movie that had been made. She met Romain Gary. It's been so long since I actually read this that I can't remember this. This is news to me. She met a guy. She was introduced by her husband. They got divorced. To the French Consul General, Romain Gary, in December of 1959. He was 24 years her senior and married to novelist Leslie Blanche at the time. He was born in the Russian Empire in a place that's now Lithuania. He had served as an aviator in World War II, and he wrote novels that were turned into movies, including The Roots of Heaven. So they developed a relationship. They had to wait for Gary's wife to divorce him, or for him to divorce his wife. She just filed for divorce from Francois. He said, I had to find out about it for getting the papers. Then they made a movie in the Congo. in the middle of all the unrest that was going on at the time. I remember that. It was bad. They had a son in July of 1962, but they hid his existence even from their families. They weren't married yet, so maybe that was the issue. They made In the French Style, she did, for Columbia, which was her first successful U.S. film. Then she was on the cover of Life magazine. She ate lunch with John Kennedy, or maybe it was dinner. Well, she ate with John Kennedy. And they were together with her boyfriend. And they married in the fall of 1963. She said that Preminger dropped her like a used Kleenex because, you know. In 1964, she made Lilith in a mental hospital, and it was what's called an edgy success. Her movies slowed because she liked the life as the wife of a French diplomat, and so she stopped making quite so many movies. She made a movie in South America. She made The Birds in Peru, directed by her husband. This is a different Birds. This is not Hitchcock. And she was horrified to realize that, oh, I'm in the middle of a porn film. She played a depraved nymphomaniac. It was the first movie to be X-rated in the U.S. and was banned in Europe. It was panned by Robert Ebert, who at first, it's interesting, she refused to do nudity and they used a body double. While filming a movie, Pendulum, her 18-year-old brother was killed. In 1969, she was in Paint Your Wagon, and she had an affair with Clint Eastwood. If you want to know about Clint Eastwood, listen to the podcast. You must remember this. And she did a whole couple of episodes on Clint Eastwood's live-in girlfriend of long term, kind of redheaded, strawberry blonde. I can't remember her name. Get a little insight into Clint Eastwood. You will not be impressed. So she had this affair with Clint Eastwood, and her husband, the diplomat, challenged Eastwood to a duel. She divorced him, and then she had a small role in the movie Airport. She was dedicated to civil rights causes. She gave money to Native American and African American causes. She was very opposed to the Vietnam War. She often spoke publicly. She appeared with Robert Kennedy Sr. at events. Despite receiving a lot of negative input, she advocated for causes in Compton and Watts, and she was a card-carrying member of the Black Panthers. She was investigated by the FBI. She got searched at customs. Her house was broken into, and a gun was left as a threat. Her cats were poisoned. She took refuge at her acting coach's house and gave the coach a package to hold for her. Oh, she left town and she returned in a month. She'd flown to Rome and then come back and opened the package. There was a man's shirt with blood on it. I have no idea what that was about, if that was a threat somebody sent her. Hoover, J. Edgar, called her and Fonda I couldn't read my abbreviation. That's an unusual abbreviation. It's because I didn't want to say the word out loud. I remember what the word meant. So J. Edgar Hoover called her and Jane Fonda bees. And the only way to take care of racial tension, he said, was to ignore law enforcement. In other words, not to follow the law. Justice is merely incidental to law and order, was what he said. This is terrible. Her phones were tapped. Her conversations were overheard, and it was assumed that she was pregnant by a Black Panther member. She OD'd but was saved. However, the baby was born prematurely and died. There was an alleged attempt to kidnap her son, but he escaped their grasp. This baby that died, she wanted to bury. It was a daughter. She wanted to bury it in Iowa. She got drunk on the plane and made a scene at the airport, and then opened the casket and took a bunch of pictures. Her husband, Romain, didn't come. He had a sudden illness, which fed the speculation about the baby's paternity. She was severely depressed and treated with lithium. She was unstable, and you kind of have to ask, did she have postpartum blues, like, postpartum, what's it called? Postpartum syndrome, postpartum whatever. Or was she bipolar? Or what was going on? Schizophrenic? She claimed she heard voices. Hard to know. She was put on the FBI's security list of terror threats. Her husband wrote White Dog about untraining a racist dog. They divided their Paris apartment so they both could live there after the divorce to let their son go to school in Paris. She made a movie with Dennis Beery, and after 3 weeks of dating, they got married in Vegas in March of '72. She acted and directed and wrote in Europe, but her marriage was very shaky. The DOJ admitted that the FBI planted paternity rumors and caused her all that grief. And she was targeted by COINTELPRO, that not so secret, not so conspiratorial, it was true surveillance program. The counterintelligence program. It was an illegal agency within the FBI whose authority spanned the offices of the CIA, U.S. Army Intelligence, White House, Attorney General, and even local and state law enforcement agencies. The mission, in the words of Hoover, was to, quote, expose, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, and otherwise neutralize specific groups and individuals. Victims included the Native American rights movement, anti-war, anti-racist, environmental groups, gender and class equality groups, and the Black Panther Party. Even Martin Luther King Jr. was brutally harassed by COINTELPRO days before he was killed. She claimed the FBI got my daughter and they're going to pay for it. She blamed them. Her Iowa family rarely saw her or her husband, but they did say that they were just, glad that she seemed like she was happy. Well, I don't know how happy, but she was treated with electric shock therapy and then divorced from Barry. She took up civil rights causes, the cause of Algerian civil rights. They were trying to come out from under the colonial thumb of France. She had a delusion that she was dating the president of Algeria and was soon to become the first lady of Algeria. Despite suffering mental and physical pain, she volunteered as an SOS friendship listener for a Paris self-harm helpline. Raymond Weintraub, one of the few friends the actress kept in touch with at this point in her life, described the situation, quote, "It was really an instance of the drowning, trying to save the drowning." That's very sad. Writing helped her to reclaim her sobriety. She got involved with a 19-year-old con artist drug traffic. She felt she knew too much and she was afraid. A little paranoia going on. She disappeared August 30th in the morning. She was declared missing September 7th and found in a car, on her car, September 8th. Her body was in the back under a bunch of stuff. She'd been dead since the 30th. It appeared she'd OD'd and had written a letter to her son. It was probably at her own hand. She was buried in Paris. Eventually, the full truth of the FBI smear was revealed, and strange facts were revealed around her death. She had a very high alcohol level, but there was no bottle of alcohol in the car. There was no alcohol around. And other things led her husband, Romain, to say that she had been murdered. Her boyfriend, the 19-year-old con artist drug guy, was arrested for stealing money and jewelry from her, spent 2 years in prison. December 2nd of 1980, oh my God, Romain did himself in. His son was 18. People remembered her generosity. She gave money to strangers on the bus, money to hungry children. She took care of sick animals herself. She gave money to people for free breakfasts. She had a lot of compassion for people in need, and she lived her conviction. She put her money where her convictions were. She was paranoid, but as time has passed, people think maybe she had a good reason to be paranoid. The FBI was spying on her. They had a 320-page file on her. Her mental health was ruined by people with no ethics. She considered her best role herself. And in 2019, a book came out about her called, was it a book or a show? Let me see. Called Against All Enemies. Oh, okay. Actress Kristen Stewart, of the Twilight movie fame, will portray Seberg in the this book was written before, portray Seberg in the 2019 political thriller Against All Enemies. It focuses on the FBI's surveillance of the actress. And the comment that she was her best role was herself was written by a reviewer of her film Playtime, because she lived her life with a lot of integrity, really practiced what she preached. But her mental health was always delicate, and the pressure got to her. Her health was ruined by people with no ethics. Well, I don't want to read more because then we'll be way, way over time. So I'm going to stop here, and thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. I have to be honest, Anne Baxter and Jean Seberg, not my favorite actresses. Their movies were not my favorite movies. And one movie that's been remade a couple of times now that I just find does not appeal to me, Joan of Arc, doesn't appeal to me. Didn't Ingrid Bergman play it at one point? I don't know. There's something about the story that's just really odd. I should do a video about Joan of Arc. Okay, everybody have a good weekend. Thank you very much for listening, and enjoy this lighthearted fare, because coming up very soon, I've got a book that's going to equal parts entertain and infuriate. Slán go fóill. Slánte.